Stellar Fundraising Auctions presents Black Tie and Tails, brought to you by Sojourn Ventures and Greater Giving, and featuring your hosts, fundraising auctioneers Greg Quiroga and Devon Bell.
Welcome to Black Tie and Tails, where we take you behind the scenes of the wonderful world of fundraising auctions to tell tales of triumph and tragedy. I am your hoarse host, Greg Quiroga. This is my co-host, Devon Bell.
Hello, all.
And this week we're talking about competition. And in an auction, competition is great.
So you've said.
I mean, we thrive on it, right? There's nothing better than when two bidders get a bee in their bonnet and decide that what they're going to do is bid something up. Like I am taking, what's your phrase for it?
KS Mas Macho.
KS Mas Macho.
As Ed used to say, someone wants to be a tall poppy.
Yes. And nothing's better in an auction than when two bidders want to both be the tall poppy. What's a challenge is when your auction is in competition with another event, another auction, or sporting events. I mean, we're blessed to be in the Bay Area where it seems like every single year there is one team vying for the championship.
We have storied franchises in all the major league sports.
And what's a challenge as a fundraising event is that you start planning your event, and 6 months out, you don't look at the calendar and go, oh, hey, we're going to be on the third Thursday of September. We should really worry about the Giants playoff schedule. And that's what happened to me. I was doing an event in Northern California in 2012. So it was the Giants. The Giants had just won the World Series in 2010 and then came close and, I think they missed the playoffs entirely in 2011. And then 2012, they're back at it.
They were doing their win it every other year thing.
Right, every other year. And in 2012, we're doing this event. And what was interesting about this event was that I don't think the event planners or the organization were sports aware. Because when I said, so what's the plan for the Giants playoff game? They're like, what do you mean? What? And I was like, oh, well, the Giants are in the playoffs. It's the NLCS. Like when they win this and they're off to the races to the World Series. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Was kind of the plan. So it was the event was taking place in a tent attached to a restaurant. So in the restaurant, where there's a bar, there's televisions, where everybody's hanging out during the cocktail hour and the silent auction. The games are on the TVs and people are watching the games, and it isn't disruptive because it's a cocktail hour. Everybody's drinking and talking. And then the time comes to move everybody into the tent to get seated for the dinner and the program. And the majority of people go in and get seated and start to realize like, oh, hey, nothing's happening over here. Oh, look, that game is still on in there.
And now it's crunch time.
Now it's crunch time. And so people start trickling in to go. And pretty soon you've got this, I'm not going to say large, like 12, 15 people who are in a different room at an event, cheering and yelling and having a great time and rooting for their team to go on. And it was it was disruptive to the event in the sense that it divided the event. And
you know how when we have an event and then there'll be that dozen people by the bar that are partying and have no interest. And when we have a solemn moment, you can hear them all partying. It's exactly why we say, actually, you shut down the bar during the fun and need.
Right. And I think eventually what they had to do was shut down the televisions.
Oh, riot.
To get everybody in to sit down and for the dinner and for the program. But it was a fascinating lesson because the event organizers were offended that anybody would want to watch a game during their event, right? And some of this is a little bit of the if we build it, they will come mentality. But also part of it's like I understand like what you've spent all this time. You've spent an entire hopefully year working on and planning towards, and all of a sudden the sports gods roll the dice, and you're competing with the San Francisco Giants and for the thing. And I think the challenge at a certain point, what you have to do is, I always encourage honest communication and acknowledging the moment, acknowledging the reality of where we are, right?
It's the ninth inning, a man on, we're down by one. Hey, come listen to these welcome remarks from the executive director.
and so to try to do an event at the same time as a sporting event and not acknowledge that the sporting event is taking place, or not acknowledge that donors might be interested in the sporting event, is difficult at the very least, problematic at worst. And I think it really led to some of the tensions that made that event not feel successful at the end of the day.
Sure. And you said it perfectly when you said they spend all this time planning their event. You have no way of knowing that on Friday, the 20th of September, that's going to be Game 3 of the National League Championship Series.
Right.
You can't know that when you're doing consulting and making the plans for the auction.
And on the flip side, if you're a week out and you know that, it's time to start making some plans, because I don't think it's reasonable to assume that everybody in your crowd is going to want I don't think it's reasonable to assume that everybody in your crowd is not going to care about sports.
There are people in your crowd who won't know that the Giants are even in the playoffs.
Right.
But especially when a team is successful and the bandwagon gets going, there's going to be enough people that care about it that it's going to change the vibe of your event if the sporting event is happening at the same time.
And that's a great segue. Hold that thought, because Black Tie and Tails is brought to you by our partner, Greater Giving. Join the ranks of successful schools and nonprofits nationwide. Partner with Greater Giving, a leading global payments company for more than 20 years. From seamless event management tools to volunteer training and enhanced fundraising capabilities, Greater Giving's secure all-in-one solutions drive results. Uncover the power of their platform. I always want to say that. Uncover the power of their platform and access invaluable resources at greatergiving.com. And when I first came up in 2004, and Michelle Holman at Greater Giving was one of the first professionals in the fundraising auction space that I was introduced to. Back then it was a different name, but we'll stick with Greater Giving for the sake of keeping the branding consistent. But I was introduced to Greater Giving in 2004. And so, yeah, when they say 20 years, they mean more than 20 years.
They know their stuff like we know our stuff, and they've been a preferred partner of Stellar for many, many years.
And we'll do another one of these Black Tie and Tails where we talk about the challenges of not getting people's payment, not getting credit card swiped in advance. But we'll save that for a different day. Let's just say Greater Giving makes that possible. So before the break, and is this a good time to stop? And 12 minutes. Okay. So before the break, you were talking about bandwagon, and I know you've got a story where the bandwagon was a good thing.
Yeah, we all remember 10 years ago when the Warriors went from lovable losers, they've been terrible forever, the best war memories we have are the We Believe with Baron Davis, like they did not have success. And then all of us who love sports, I'm a sports lover, all of us in the Bay Area got to ride along with them as, wait a minute, maybe they're good. Oh, they are good. Oh, they're the champions. Oh, they dominate, right? And so it was a lot of fun on the journey up, and it was great for our business,
right?
Because all of a sudden selling your Warrior tickets, the cachet was just up. Now I will say that ended up turning into almost like Warrior fatigue, and I felt like at a certain number of years in, everyone who wanted to go to a Warrior game had been to one, and everyone who wanted to go to a Warrior game in the playoffs had been to one, right? And it was hard to sell. Like early on, remember you'd sell Warrior tickets for thousands of dollars just to be there because it was so exciting to have them have success.
But I remember 2 playoff tickets. It was the week of, and we had 2 tickets for a couple of nights from the event. And I remember 2 playoff tickets selling for $27,000 one night.
for 15, you can get a suite. So that is caught up in the moment, which we're all for. but
don't Google, just bid.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not get into how much these would be online. What's important is that we all love each other. So anyway, so I was doing an event, and it was in the spring. So the Warriors were in the playoffs, and it was early in their run. So there was a lot of crackle and a lot of
vibe, a lot of
vibe. And it turns out on this weekend night that the event, in fact, the live program, was going to be happening at the same time as the game. But unlike the organization about which you were just speaking, they kind of embraced it and knew that there would be a lot of Warrior interest in the crowd. And so we talked about it several times. And in fact, I did what I checked with the crowd first and said, hey, cover your ears and say blah, blah, blah if you don't want to hear this, but I'm going to give the score as the evening goes. So if you're DVRing, avert your eyes. And so we said the score several times during the night, and the Warriors were doing well. So
sold, and the Warriors by 7 with 5 minutes left.
Exactly, and they were doing well, so it made a lot of excitement. And then, chef's kiss, our last lot was tickets to the game that is now happening because the Warriors won that game.
Oh, you couldn't have planned it better.
Right? Like, it's just absolutely in the moment, and everyone's feeling the joy, and all of a sudden the prospect of being at that next game feels so vital and so important. And as I remember, those tickets did very, very well. So it can't be helped. Sometimes if there's another event happening at the same time as your event, but like you said, maybe you can embrace it and turn it into a feature, not a bug.
Yeah. Black Tie and Tails is brought to you by our partners, Sojourn Ventures. When you need to add a little travel spice to your lineup of auction items, check out Sojourn Ventures. Sojourn curates trips to Italy, Bali, and now Spain at reasonable consignment prices. They offer over a dozen curated packages that include round-trip airport transfers, full body massages, daily breakfasts, in-home chef's dinners, and more. Your buyers will enjoy top-level concierge service, 2 full years to redeem their trip, all at reasonable consignment prices. Check out sojournventurestravel.com or look for the link in the bio of this podcast. So I think let's implement a new segment, and let's call it the Horror Story of the Week. Ooh. And I did an event just last year that was, you talk about the Warriors being on a run, and here we are in 2023 last year, 2023. So the Warriors have been at it for 7 years now. They've been making the playoffs or coming close or in it, and expected to be in it.
4 titles in 8 years, something like that.
Something like that. And so last year they make the playoffs, and they announced that their playoff game is going to be on the same night as a big event that I do. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to address this? And they said, what we're going to do is put up screens and watch the game. And so we put up, we had the big projection screens like we always do on either side of the stage. Plus they put up LED screens. They rented like 60-inch LEDs and put them up.
Is this during the live program?
Oh, no. Okay. During the cocktail hour.
Okay.
Hey, wait, but you're foreshadowing because you're on the right base. You're on the right. It wouldn't be a horror story if everything went according to plan. So they put up screens all over the venue, and when the time came, they started showing the game, and it became really obvious that there are some people who are very, very committed Warriors fans because they're in and they're watching, and then it also became obvious that there are some people who are really irritated non-Warriors fans. And the game, as you know, even a playoff game tends to start a little later. Let me back up and say playoff games start earlier than the 7 p.m. regular normal times, but they're still starting relatively like the playoff game starts in the middle of our cocktail hour, and games last how long?
3 hours, 2.5.
3 hours.
Yeah.
So we've got this game that lasts through the cocktail hour. Now we're supposed to get seated and have dinner, and we're in the beginning of the fourth quarter. Oh. And the Warriors aren't winning.
The fourth quarter when people usually just turn the game off watching the end.
And so they make the decision, what we're going to do is delay dinner. And they had all the conversations in advance. I mean, they had all the conversations to make this manageable. So they had talked to the caterer. They had warned the kitchen. They had warned everybody that this is what we're going to do. But then we still did it, right? So dinner gets delayed an hour. Everybody getting seated to start the program gets delayed an hour. And then on top of it all, the Warriors lose.
Oh.
So all the air gets sucked out of the crowd that cares, and all the people who don't care are like, well, then why on earth did we do this in the first place? What was the point? Like, they didn't even win, right? And so, and we launch into the program. It's for a local organization that serves youth. It does amazing work. And again, I said earlier, I am always about honest communication and trying to be real where we are in the moment, right? Trying to represent what the moment is. And so in this moment, I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the bridge, right? How on earth do I take this situation and make it relevant to the fundraising?
The Warriors lost, but we can all win right now.
And yes, right, because I was like, because you're on the right track. Because I know, but like, turn down the cheese and turn up the emotional the emotional engagement. Because I was like, okay, well, here's the deal. And so I was over, typing furiously on my tablet, trying to get the notes all written up, because I'm like, oh, I got it. And so I basically rewrote my auction pitch at the beginning of the evening to the introduction, and I said, look, here's the thing. The Warriors get another chance to play I think it was the Lakers. They get another game, right? They may have lost, but they have another game. But tonight is this organization's game 7. We are
sports metaphor.
With tonight is their only chance to win. Tonight is their only chance for you to support them. And if you don't support them in this moment, then it's all for naught, basically. And managed to turn it around and take it in that direction, and brought it back together. But still, there's nothing quite like, I mean, we see timelines slip all the time. I've yet to see a timeline slip by an hour something by choice.
Yeah, and I mean, well done. I think that was a good idea to tie it in. And of course, the non-Warrior fans in there were saying, what's game 7? I have the faintest idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. But how many people can you please all of the time?
right, exactly.
Right, like definitely not enough of them, not all of them. The other thing that we haven't talked about, and I think it's worth noting, I don't have a specific story for this, but it's worth noting that sometimes there are competing events, right? Your auction's happening at the same time as another auction, or your kid's graduation that's happening, or any number of things. We actually did an event once on Union Square, tented the entire Union Square to do this big event, and so our green room was across the street at the Westin St. Francis. I go across the street to the Westin St. Francis, and there's an auction happening in the ballroom at the Westin St. Francis for a different organization, and it's like, oh my gosh, like hopefully their crowd and our crowd are separate crowds, right? But there are always there are going to be, it's the Bay Area at San Francisco. There's always going to be something else happening. But I think what's important to nonprofit organizations is to make sure that it's not something that is relevant or enticing to their bidders.
I have had the experience of having a competing event that existed, but never like within the same block. I could see like you announce what this fundraiser's in benefit of, and like a third of the people go, oh, whoops, and get up and leave.
I'm in the wrong place.
I'm hoping they're saying the same thing over at the other event.
Oh, it's too funny. Too funny. So I think it's important, like, do your homework. Right, I think, and the simple homework is to, in San Francisco, check the Nob Hill Gazette, or to look online and see who else is doing. I know a lot of organizations actually are networked and will call each other, like, when are you doing your event? When are you doing your? And they'll coordinate to try and make sure that they are not competing with each other.
Yeah, they would do well to do some coordination, because no reason to be at cross purposes. There might be people at both.
Yeah, and we've all done those events where, like, unfortunately, the person who was going to bid on that lot couldn't be with us because they had to go to something else, right? And
exactly why we say don't do your event every other year.
Oh,
because
yeah.
you get out of the lineup of the donor class of what parties they're going to, and so then the year goes by and they don't go to your event. Well, now it's not in their lineup anymore.
Absolutely, people tend to book the weekend,
right?
Whatever, and if your weekend is free, they'll book it with someone else. That's a great point.
Darn you, Fleet Week.
Be prepared to adapt, I think, and to be aware, even if you don't care about sports, for example, in the Bay Area, or you don't care about beta breakers or whatever the thing is, be aware of its potential. Be prepared to adapt. I don't know if you necessarily need to go to the point of putting up screens and delaying your auction for an hour and a half so everybody can watch the Warriors lose, but I do think it's important to have some sort of a plan in place, to at least acknowledge it, to at least have conversations with your donors, to make sure that your people know and understand that you're aware of the competing interest and the importance of supporting you versus staying home and watching the game on TV.
Yeah, it's a social event, and people do other things besides your event, which is, in an unrelated story, we never have an event the week of Christmas. I wonder why. Yeah. Just maybe people might be doing other things that week. Crazy guess.
Or Easter,
yeah.
Or New Year's,
yep.
Or 4th of July,
yep.
Or Labor Day, or Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So
second week of June, that's graduation time. You're playing with fire.
Got a lot of competing events that you got to be aware of and stay away from. And so to make sure that you're looking ahead, being proactive, being prepared to adapt, and most importantly, making sure that if there are competing events for your date and time, that your donors understand why you're the most important. What will happen if they don't show up and support you? Because at the end of the day, it is always about messaging. It is always about creating a sense of connection with individuals and getting them to come in and support your cause. And if you're not doing that effectively, you're losing an entirely different competition.
Yeah, and if you want the third weekend in March, you better get with it, because so does everybody else.
And the bidding will start at. Thank you for listening to Black Tie and Tails. You can find the podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, YouTube, and all your favorite podcast distribution channels. You can also find it online at www.blacktieandtails.com.
And be sure to tune in the next time for Red Alert, facing an emergency at your event.
Sounds scary.